You're watching News Central Television, and this is News Now with me, Joe Hanson. Let's take a look at the top stories for this hour. NNPCL bars sale of petrol to independent marketers amidst surging prices. Federal government disburses 3 billion naira to affected states. World Health Organization says first set of vaccines due in DR Congo on Thursday. Stay with us for details coming up shortly. News Central now. This hour begins with updates on the current fuel scarcity amidst soaring prices across states in Nigeria. The Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation Limited, NNPCL, has suspended a sale of petrol to independent marketers following a price hike to 855 naira per litre. This led to protests in Delta State by commercial tricycle operators. Meanwhile, 3 vessels arrived at Apapa, Lagos to discharge imported petrol amid growing fuel scarcity. The hike left commuters stranded nationwide as fuel queues worsened. Many commercial drivers stayed off the roads, citing the soaring prices, with some states seeing rates as high as 1,200 naira to 1,300 naira per litre. The Independent Petroleum Marketers Association of Nigeria expressed frustration over the lack of communication from NNPCL despite having paid for products months ago. Marketers now resort to private depots selling at even higher prices. Residents of Lagos are getting more vocal with their grievances as the price of petrol continues to rise. While some stations remain shut, others have updated their prices on their billboards and have commenced sale. News Central's Bernard Akede has been monitoring the fuel situation around Lagos, and he has this in his report.
The lamentation of Lagos residents as they are now faced with their new reality, a significant increase in the pump price of petrol.
Can you see that pedestrian bridge? The pedestrian bridge over there, that was where I met the queue. Around 3 a.m. Until now, I'm yet to go inside. We shouldn't be suffering like this now. We shouldn't be suffering like this. I mean, these things, we have these things. It's just as if your mother has a restaurant and you're begging for food to eat.
We are suffering with that 620, but now, see, the hardship is too much. To enter transport from my place to the working place is so high. While I'm managing 3,000 for transport before, it's now close to 6,000 naira for transport, which is too much.
Some petrol stations have already started effecting the new price on their boards as they commenced sale. Earlier in the day, News Central's crew visited an NNPC Limited fuel station for price increase confirmation, but as of the time, there was still no official statement.
I went inside earlier to speak to the manager of the petrol station, and he told me that the reason why they're not selling is because they haven't received petrol just yet. I equally asked him about the increase in price. Will the price go up? What is the official price now? And he declined responding to that question, saying that he hasn't received any memo as to price increase. Basically, he said all he can say is he can confirm that they will receive petrol sometime today. When they receive the product, he's expecting to get the memo as to what the new price will be. That's if there's an increase in the price, and then they'll begin to sell at that price, whatever it may be.
Residents of Lagos who spoke to News Central's crew lamented how more difficult things are about to become as the price of almost everything is hinged on the price of petrol.
920. Adi tó bá gbèrú mọ́tò ìwá ní ìsìn wá ní kó fílẹ̀ ní ìsìn òrà 90-something thousand ló máa kún. Ṣó yẹ kó rí bẹ́ẹ̀ ni? Lílù tá a ná bàtà níjòyè, ẹ jọ̀ọ́ tó Ọlọ́run bá ẹ bá wa bẹ̀ wọ́n. Kàn wá solution, kò sómi, kò síná, kò sí nǹkan kan. Gbogbo nǹkan everything kàn high, ó kàn high. Ókè ní ìsìn, wọ́n máa tẹ̀kọ́ 920 ní ìsìn. Ó yá, èèlò lèèyàn fẹ́ máa fi jẹun.
Meanwhile, whether or not petrol is being sold, residents of Lagos continue to join queues in front of petrol stations the moment they see signs of availability, regardless of how much it will be sold for.
Nigerians now have to come to terms with their new reality. The pump price of petrol has increased per litre. The question to now be asked is, with this new increment in price, will the product be readily available? Will the queues now disappear? Will petrol scarcity now be a thing of the past? Only time will tell. In Lagos for News Central, I'm Bernard Akede.
Well, let's also tell you that the Citizens for Democratic Dividends in Nigeria has criticized the Nigeria Labour Congress for accusing the federal government of betraying their trust by increasing fuel prices despite agreeing on a new minimum wage of 70,000 naira lower than the union's original demand. In a statement signed by its executive director, Ahmad Idris, the group accused the NLC of betraying Nigerians by accepting the 70,000 naira minimum wage while overlooking the economic hardships faced by millions. The group also criticized the Joe Ajaero-led NLC for refusing to participate in the nationwide #EndBadGovernance protests. This comes after NLC President Joe Ajaero, in a statement on Tuesday, accused President Bola Ahmed Tinubu of a deep sense of betrayal following the recent fuel price hike. Away from that, the National Economic Council has issued a deadline of Monday, September 9, for 4 states to submit their reports on the establishment of state police. The NEC aims to adopt comprehensive reports from all 36 states and the Federal Capital Territory on the matter by Monday. Addressing State House correspondents after the NEC meeting, which was presided over by Vice President Kashim Shettima at the Presidential Villa in Abuja, Oyo State's acting Governor Bayo Lawal confirmed that all states are expected to submit their reports for consideration.
NEC consider the establishment of state police and ask states to make submissions for consideration. Today, all the states were supposed to submit for consideration of the NEC. Incidentally, 4 states couldn't submit, and for that purpose, NEC decided that those states must make their submissions on or before Monday next week. Otherwise, whatever decision NEC takes on the establishment of state police will be binding on those states that refuse to submit, to make submissions. So that is the resolution as of today's NEC meeting.
Let's now tell you that stakeholders of the Labour Party have set up a 29-member committee to organize the World Congress across the nation. The committee is to be headed by Namadi Usman and Darlington Nwokocha and will serve as the secretary of the committee. The leader of the party, Peter Obi, who announced the composition of the committee at the banquet hall of the Government House in Umuahia, the Abia State capital, southeast Nigeria, said the party has resolved to toe the right path in correcting what could become a costly mistake. Also, Governor Alex Otti has said that if things remain the way they are in the party, everything done by the executive will become a nullity later. Edward Pojok gave highlights of the communique reached at the end of the meeting. News Central's Chinwe Ogile tells us more in this report.
The stakeholders attended the meeting from the different states in Nigeria with a singular agenda, the salvation of their political party. At the end of the expanded stakeholders meeting in Umuahia, a transition committee headed by Namadi Usman with Darlington Nwokocha as secretary was announced to put the party in order for the congresses at the wards, local government and states, as highlighted by Edward Pojok.
And INEC said Labour Party does not have any leadership. So we said, no, we can't leave a vacuum. It will be dangerous. In fact, it constitutes an existential threat to the party. So we said, we better put in place a leadership that INEC will recognize.
He also said the party has instructed members to withdraw all litigations from the courts. Speaker after speaker identified that the party is at the verge of an irreparable error if things are allowed to remain the way they are.
It doesn't matter about your relationship with anybody. Once what you're doing is not right, you'll be endangering everybody's interests and rights.
Presidential candidate of the party in the 2023 general election, Peter Obi, did not mince words in telling it as it is.
We're not trying to set up another leadership. No, we're not trying to do this. It's just a system that will help to get to where we're going. That's what we want to do. Not another group that can become a problem for everybody, but a group that will solve the problem.
Governor Alex Oti, the host, said the earlier all outstanding leadership battles are resolved in the party, the better for members.
Because INEC does not recognize the working committee, national working committee that existed. If they conducted primaries and selected candidates, they will not list those candidates in those off-cycle elections. Just last Friday, another meeting held involving all the political parties. We were not even invited.
Representatives of the Nigeria Labour Congress echoed the need for the right thing to be done.
Once in a while, you peep in to say yes. Remember, the rule of law must be followed. To make sure that we don't make the mistakes we are trying to correct right now.
The stakeholders confirm that the tenure of Julius Abure as national chairman of the party expired since 8th of June 2024 and so will not jeopardize its chances in the coming elections with illegality. In Omaha for News Central, Chinwe Ugele.
All the way from politics, Nigeria's electricity sector is entering a new era with states now allowed to establish and regulate the electricity markets. This shift follows a constitutional amendment and the enactment of the Electricity Act of 2023 signed by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. The Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission, NEC, has granted regulatory approvals to 6 states, Enugu, Ekiti, Ondo, Imo, Oyo, and Edo states, marking a significant step in decentralizing power supply. These changes allow states to manage electricity generation, transmission, and distribution, aiming to improve energy access and stimulate economic growth. States must notify NEC and transfer regulatory authority within 6 months, highlighting their readiness to control their electricity markets. Well, to discuss this, we are joined by Stanley Negbenebo, a legal practitioner. Thank you for being here with me, Stanley, this morning. How will the states ensure...
Good morning to you.
Good morning to you. Now, how will the states indeed ensure a smooth transition to the electricity markets, given the existing infrastructure and regulatory framework? And most importantly, what challenges might they face in terms of coordination and harmonization with the national grid?
First off, we need to first say that the journey that we have gone through as a nation in respect of our electric power challenge has been more of a regulatory framework issue. Incidentally, the recent regulatory amendments by way of first the constitutional amendment and eventually the enactment of the Electricity Act has created the right platform for things to be put in proper perspective. In terms of challenges, well, first off, the first challenge, which is the regulatory framework, has been catered for. Going back in time, if you recollect, there was an attempt by the Lagos state government to resolve the electricity challenges in Lagos at that time, the Enron project that was botched. But incidentally, because of political rigmarole, that didn't come to light. But now that obstacle has been taken out. It's left for the state to have the political will to take responsibility to solve the energy crisis that has pervaded our entire space. Now, what does any state need to do? Like the 6 states that you mentioned earlier have already done, they've taken the legislative action, which is first and foremost creating the legal framework within their states to set up a regulatory agency for electricity market in their state. From the point when every state has taken this step of passing the necessary law, they have an obligation to also notify the Nigerian Electric Regulatory Commission, that's NEC, to tell them that now we have the law, our regulatory agency is in place. The next step after this is infrastructural development. Now here comes the challenge. That challenge is to get infrastructure, you need a lot of funding. So maybe if you ask me, that challenge of funding may be the biggest obstacle, but can that challenge be solved? Yes, it can. With the state of the law right now, I'm sure private investors are waiting to latch upon the opportunities that exist in the Nigerian market. Perhaps I may state that Nigeria has one of the biggest markets in the world over, and we are actually supposed to be beautiful, bright for investment. What has actually hampered the situation has actually been the legal and regulatory framework over the period of time. So if you ask me, the coast is clear right now. We just need to get our acts right.
All right. Anyway, you've talked about investments and Nigeria needing to get its act right. But let's talk about decentralization of power supply and its effect, especially on electricity tariffs, and not forgetting to consumer affordability. Currently, we do have Nigerians who are already complaining about the cost of power and how they're not able to meet up, especially in some quarters. Now that we're looking at the decentralization, how do you think this would affect especially consumption users being able to afford it?
Well, in terms of affordability, I would say first things first. Right pricing is important. The cost of production must ultimately reflect on the end user cost. If you ask me, the average Nigerian spends a lot on seeking alternative energy right now by way of running their private generators and all of that. If we have an effective system that is functional, I'm sure that it can be right priced, and that's where the regulators come into play. The demand is there, the investments are needed, but Nigerians need to also understand that if a private investor is coming to intervene, he's intervening because he's also hoping to get return on his investment. As to whether or not there can be progress on this regard, I can tell you for a fact that the biggest challenge we've had has been the national grid, which is more than 40 years old and continues to collapse every other day, of course, because of the old technology that it's still operating on. People need to just understand that electricity price everywhere in the world is not cheap. What we should be focused on should be efficiency. And if we want efficiency, we must want the right price. And the right price will be subject to the cost of production. For instance, access to gas, for instance, states closer to gas plants shouldn't actually spend as much as people who need to actually pipe gas to a distance before they can get to the generating companies. All that would actually reflect on the cost effect on the long run. I've always said to people that decentralizing power supply in Nigeria is the best bet. The North doesn't even have a business using gas to power. If you use the solar generating system up north, you will get as much power as you require that would serve the entirety of the North. Those in the middle belt can latch upon the hydropower, and you will see that the cost-benefit analysis of actually using local content to solve each state's electricity needs will go a long way in bringing down the cost at the end of the day.
All right. Anyway, I think we've gotten your point. I want to say thank you so much for talking to us, legal practitioner Stanley Negbenebo. Thanks for your time.
You're welcome, sir.
All right. Well, stay with us. We have more stories coming your way here on News Now after the break. Thanks for staying with us. The Nigerian Army says that it is committed to leveraging artificial intelligence in its fight against banditry, insurgency and other insecurity challenges threatening the peace and stability of the country. The Chief of Army Staff stated this during this year's Nigerian Army Heritage and Future Center's leadership training for junior commanders in Kaduna State, northwest Nigeria. He says that current security challenges require innovative strategies and advanced use of technology to tackle them. Our correspondent, Idong Joseph, completes the report.
Nigeria is faced with an array of security challenges, from the Boko Haram insurgency to banditry, down to kidnapping for ransom and farmers-herders clashes. This over the years has forced the army to also be involved in security operations aimed at tackling criminalities across the country, together with the police.
These emerging threats pose significant challenges to junior leadership, thus pushing the armed forces of Nigeria into unfamiliar situation that requires novel skills and approaches. These, among other situations, demand that junior leadership must be circumspect, adaptive, and responsive.
To ensure junior officers of various units of the Nigerian Army are prepared to confront the evolving security threats, this training has been designed to equip them with relevant technological skills to build their capacity and update their knowledge on latest technological advances.
Seminar will seek to familiarize the Nigerian military junior leaders and commanders to today's security environment and their roles in mitigating them, as well as drawing the attention to possible future challenges and ways in which they will be able to put together technology and their common responsibility in resolving them.
The training is especially going to emphasize the importance of technology and the fact that the battle space is expanding, where there will be no borders, and they need to, meet up with that within that space, especially to leverage, artificial intelligence and be prepared for that future battle space.
The training targets junior officers from various units of the Nigerian Army, recognizing that they are often the first to respond to distress calls and challenging situations.
Youths from northeast Nigeria presented a unified front during the engagement with the Minister of Youth, demanding concrete actions to address the region's pervasive hunger, insecurity and the increasing petrol hike. The youth leaders outlined the increasing frequency of attacks by insurgent groups and the resulting displacement of communities. News Central's Umaru Kirawa completes the report.
A zonal town hall meeting in Maiduguri with the Minister of Youth. The gathering, marked by speeches and impassionate calls for reform, highlighted the escalating issues of hunger and insecurity affecting the region. Youth groups presented a comprehensive list of demands, including increased security measures, enhanced food aid programs, and greater investment in the population.
Especially Mr. President, tell him that the youth of Nigeria are angry with him.
One of the most important things is for them to consider the fuel subsidy issue. By doing that, it will seriously help out with the hunger problem we're having currently in the country.
The federal government should look into this as a matter of urgency to do the needful, because we are suffering in this country.
The minister, acknowledging the gravity of the concerns, promised to work closely with regional leaders to implement sustainable solutions.
There is no development where there is no peace, and there is no peace without development. So we seek your support and your collaboration to work with us.
I'm also telling you, if you go back to your steps, please hold your governments accountable for some of these activities.
Nigeria's Minister of Youth engaged with Borno State government on how to forge a strengthened relationship for growth.
I assure you that one of those responses on our part in the Federal Ministry of Youth Development is the approval by the Federal Executive Council to immediately release 110 billion naira restructured and expanded youth investment fund to support young people who have enterprises.
I'm aware that the ministry is creating a lot of programs and initiatives on youth development. And I want to assure you that government of Borno State, under my leadership, will partner with you.
One major concern of Nigerian citizens is more effective measures to combat the insurgency that continues to threaten their safety and well-being. In Maiduguri for News Central, Umaru Kirawa.
Anti-corruption experts have tasked Nigeria's federal government to ensure transparency in its extractive sector to help mitigate challenges affecting the sector, ranging from corruption, opaqueness during operations and adverse effects of climate change. This was during the first International Anti-Corruption and Climate Change Conference, which held in Abuja. Amadine Uyi reports.
It was a two-day conference organized by Pro-Transparency Organization, HEDA, with the theme, National Stakeholders Engagement for Accountability and Transparency in Addressing Climate Change and Energy Transition. Those in attendance said the discourse will bed knowledge expected to transform Nigeria's extractive sector, bettering national consciousness that will bring about transformation in the light of climate change challenges.
From the caliber of accomplished individuals and interests represented in this room this morning, I am confident that today's discourse will birth fresh body of knowledge that will be the springboard for radical reforms and transformation of hydrocarbon exploitation and environmental consciousness within the Nigerian oil and gas sector.
Experts say Nigeria's extractive sector faces multiple challenges ranging from a lack of transparency, opaqueness during operations, corruption, and effects of climate change.
Climate change has been variously described as the defining issue of our time today, the single greatest threat to sustainable future, our planet, and our security at large. It's not just an environmental challenge, it's a developmental challenge too, described by somebody as the Everest of all problems.
For most Nigerians, this is a new area completely, and the government hasn't done much to promote and educate Nigerians on the effect of climate change. A road has just been, a contract for a road has just been awarded in Lagos, between Lagos and Calabar, going to traverse about 8 states. There was no consideration at all the effect of climate change as far as that road is concerned.
You have communities in many of all the states in the country with high level of illegal mining, and also with the collusion of state governments and traditional rulers and the rest of that. So for us, accountability mechanisms must be laid as part of the foundation to our transition to the new source of energy.
They also emphasize the need for reforms, especially as Nigeria strives to achieve energy transition. They say government must work towards ensuring that citizens benefit from the nation's resources.
Now facing an era where we need to move from these resources to cleaner forms of energy, we need to be able to optimize the resources that we have in this critical moment to ensure that our people are not left behind.
The focus of the government should not just be about exploiting those natural resources for power generation or resource generation for the government and federation, but ultimately for the development of the people.
They also call on citizens to join efforts aimed at tackling corruption, which also possesses adverse effects on the nation. In Abuja for News Central, I am Amadin Uyi.
All the way from that report, 2 leaders from the Okwama community in Ueli South local government area of Delta State have filed a lawsuit against the Nigerian Army and the State Security Services, seeking 200 million naira in damages. James Okoroko and Dennis Okubaye, who were among 6 community leaders reportedly arrested by military officials last month, initiated separate suits at the Federal High Court in Warri through their legal team. They are challenging the arrest and prolonged detention without being charged in court or granted access to their lawyers. The claimants are seeking the enforcement of their fundamental rights, including personal liberty, privacy, dignity, and freedom of movement. They have also requested the court to order their immediate and unconditional release from detention. Let's move on now to health matters. Nigeria's National Economic Council has tasked state governments to set up a food and nutrition task force aimed at addressing the problem of acute malnutrition in the country. This was made known by the Minister of Health and Social Welfare while speaking to newsmen after the council meeting, saying NEC has mandated states to make budgetary provisions to cater for this challenge in their 2025 budget. Our correspondent Edong Joseph completes the report.
Following the recent flooding that has ravaged communities and taken a toll on Nigeria's food ecosystem, the production of food in the country has indeed taken a major hit. This recently has led to acute malnutrition, putting the lives of millions at risk. The federal government thus established a task force to enhance coordination aimed at tackling the scourge with the state governments.
Key decisions were taken to include a food and nutrition security task force, which we have already established at the federal government level, but states will also mirror that, which is a multi-sectoral governance and coordination platform.
Shortly after the National Economic Council meeting in Abuja, Nigeria's Minister of Health and Social Welfare urged states to start planning to mobilize resources via their next budget proposal. He adds that over 1 million doses of nutritional supplements are already being distributed to nursing mothers for free.
And to ensure that the resources begin to be put in place in 2025 budgets as we come towards that cycle, we are distributing multiple micronutrient supplements that have been mobilized free. 1.3 million doses have already been distributed, and each one of those 1.3 million packages will serve a pregnant woman 6 months. That will be for the mother, but also for her child.
Other members of the NEC highlighted some of the other issues being deliberated upon and resolved by the Council.
The Council also has decided that by Monday, there is also going to be Monday will be the deadline for all the states of the Federation to submit detail of damages, including farms, schools, bridges that have been affected by the last flood.
The Accountant General of the Federation updated the Council on the following accounts. The foreign excess crude accounts is starting at 473,754.47 cents.
The Ebonyi State Governor also gave an update on stabilization and natural resources accounts, which he says stands at over 33 billion and 3 billion naira respectively. The council also set up a task force for the eradication of polio in the country. In Abuja for News Central, I am Idonko Joseph.
Coming up next here on News Now, President Faye set to dissolve opposition-dominated parliament. We'll bring you details of that story and more. Stay with us. The news continues in West Africa, where Senegal's President Bassirou Diomaye Faye is set to dissolve the opposition-dominated parliament in the coming days and launch a vast anti-corruption campaign that could target dozens. This is according to Prime Minister Ousmane Sonko. Former President Macky Sall's supporters still hold the majority in the National Assembly, which was elected in 2022. Faye and Sonko need a parliamentary majority to implement the policies of change they promised on a platform of leftist pan-Africanism and social justice. The National Assembly cannot be dissolved by the president until it has sat for at least 2 years. According to reports, Faye will be able to do that from September 12, exactly 24 months after the parliament's first post-election session.
Motion de censure, faire tomber le gouvernement, il n'y aura pas de motion de censure. Il y a des politiciens complètement dépassés par les événements, appuyés par leur presse, mais je puis vous assurer qu'il n'y aura pas de motion de censure d'ici le 12, et que le 12, s'il plaît à Dieu, ces gens auront autre chose à faire que d'être députés à l'Assemblée nationale.
Doctors Without Borders, MSF, says it's concerned about HIV patients who arrive in South Sudan's health facilities after traveling for days, resulting in delays in antiretroviral therapy and very late diagnosis. Estimates indicate that in 2023, between 41% and 62% of individuals living with HIV knew their status, with less than 1 in 2 people receiving treatment. Ongoing conflicts and frequent natural disasters are some of the major factors hindering South Sudan's responses to HIV and tuberculosis epidemics, which collectively contributed to a third of deaths among adults aged 15 to 49 in 2019. MSF is calling for Chol, MSF Deputy Medical Coordinator in South Sudan. Welcome and thank you for joining us on News Now.
Thanks for having me.
All right. What is the current status of HIV and tuberculosis diagnosis and treatment in South Sudan? And how does it compare to previous years?
Well, it's estimated that there were slightly over 143,000 people living with HIV in South Sudan as at the end of 2023. That's last year. And it's also estimated that about 7,600 of these were infected only last year. This is according to the World Health Organization and the National Ministry of Health. Now, South Sudan is a country that doesn't have a large population like that of Nigeria. So talking about a disease that's incurable, these are not small numbers. And when it comes to tuberculosis, it's estimated that the incidence of the disease is 227 persons per 100,000 population. And out of these, you will find also that there are 5 people per 100,000 of the population that's living with DRTB, that's drug-resistance TB. So it's quite challenging. And even more important regarding HIV is that only 47% of the people, the population I refer to, that know their HIV status is on ARVs, on antiretroviral treatment. So this is quite concerning. It means you have more than 50% of the population that's not on HIV treatment, and this is these people who continue to spread the disease. We see people coming very late in advanced stages, coming to our facilities seeking care. So this is the situation that we are in South Sudan.
All right, let's talk about how accessible the HIV testing services are, especially in both urban and rural areas of South Sudan. How accessible is it?
Well, South Sudan has fewer health facilities than it should, and this is even more a problem in the rural areas. So, whereas relatively more people may have access to HIV testing and treatment services in the cities like Juba, the capital of South Sudan, in the rural areas, access to healthcare in general and to HIV in particular is quite limited. You have populations living far away from healthcare facilities, and they are not able to come to the facilities. And this is also coupled with issues of awareness and poor health-seeking behavior. You know, there's need to do more to make sure that the services are accessible to the people.
All right. Can you tell us what specific improvements you believe are necessary to better address the HIV and tuberculosis diagnosis and treatments in South Sudan?
I have referred to data earlier of the prevalence of HIV and also the incidence rate of TB. But then this also needs to I mean, the issue of data, access to data is quite limited here because of the fact that the health service, the Ministry of Health is under-resourced, and so data comes in very late. There's need to improve funding in terms of improving data, so that you have to have data to be able to plan, to be able to put more resources. And in general, there is a need to provide more resources. There is need to increase funding for healthcare in general, but for HIV and TB in particular, from donors as well as from the national authorities, the Ministry of Health. There's a need to recognize the circumstances under which people are living in. There's conflict, there's displacement from natural disasters. And so there's real need to adapt policies and practices that recognize this. There's need to decentralize TB and HIV care and bring it closer to the people. There's need to provide longer drug refills for people living with HIV. Instead of providing 1 month of treatment, it will be more important that they are provided with longer fields, like 6 months or more than that, because then the chances of default can be reduced.
All right. I want to thank you so much, MSF Deputy Medical Coordinator Boatu Chal, for joining us and telling us about the current situation there in South Sudan. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
All right. Well, still ahead, we have a story concerning 4 killed as police arrest 14-year-old student shooter in Georgia, USA. We'll bring to you details of that story and more. On World Rap, police say 4 people have been killed after a shooting incident at Appalachian High School in Winder, Georgia, United States on Wednesday. According to the director of the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, Chris Osei, the deceased were 2 students and 2 teachers. The perpetrator of the shooting has been identified as a 14-year-old student and is currently in custody.
His name is Colt. That's C-O-L-T, Gray. He is a 14-year-old student here at the school, G-R-A-Y. He is a 14-year-old student here at the high school. Again, he has been taken into custody. He will be charged with murder.
Meanwhile, Democratic presidential candidate Kamala Harris on Wednesday implored Americans to bring a halt to the epidemic of gun violence plaguing the United States after a mass shooting at a Georgia high school left 4 people dead. The U.S. Vice President, speaking at a rally in New Hampshire, also reiterated a call for an assault weapons ban, a position widely opposed by Republicans, and support for the further tightening of U.S. gun safety laws.
Every day in our country, in the United States of America, that parents have to send their children to school worried about whether or not their child will come home alive. It's senseless. It is, we've got to stop it. And we have to end this epidemic of gun violence in our country once and for all. You know, it doesn't have to be this way. It doesn't have to be this way.
The Nigerian under-20 women's team, the Falconets, lost 1-3 to Germany in their second Group D game in Bogota, marking their 4th defeat against Germany. Germany dominated from the start with Alara Shehita. Nigeria's Chiamaka Okechukwu equalized, but Germany secured victory with goals from Sophie's Del and Sarah Ernst. In their previous games, Germany, who beat Venezuela 5-2, topped Group D with 6 points, while Nigeria comes second with 3 points after beating South Korea 1-0. The next matches will see South Korea face Germany and Nigeria will play Venezuela. And that's all we have for you on the news for this hour. Before we go, let's take a quick look at some of the major stories. NNPCL bars sale of petrol to independent marketers amidst surging prices. Federal government disburses 3 billion naira to affected states. World Health Organization says first set of vaccines due in DR Congo on Thursday. You can join the news by sending your eyewitness reports to the WhatsApp number on the screen. And you can also follow us on all socials. We are at News Central TV. Watch us live on DSTV channel 422, Star Times channel 274. You can stream on YouTube and on Facebook. The ladies will be here at 10 on the dot for Jasiri. Make sure you tune in and stay with us. I'm Joe Hanson. Thanks for watching.